The parts have finally arrived, and now it is time for us to rebuild the garage. Now, if you're not familiar with what happened as I was moving things around, sometimes that can be quite clumsy, and this build broke apart. Now, it was very weak because we decided not to mills plate this build. And because it was so long, there were a lot of areas that had a lot of stresses depending on how you carried it. So it broke in half, and that half slammed into the table and made a massive dent, and then obviously shattered into pieces, which is unfortunate. But with Lego, you have to kind of get used to it. Things are going to break apart, and you're just going to have to put them back together. Now, not only are we going to be rebuilding this, mills plating it, we're also going to be adding some new details to it because we saw where we could have expanded upon things, and also add some stuff that, in my opinion, is going to look really cool. Now, another thing that we decided to do is change the placement of the garage, which used to be further over to the right. And the reason to this is, well, if we kept the entrance there, we would have to rob quite a bit of space from this front part to include a road that would lead into the garage. That would take up about almost 3/4 of a base plate, which in our opinion kind of wastes a lot of space. Instead of just moving that door over to the left, then now we're only taking up maybe a half a base plate, if that. Which to me, that kind of, since we have to rebuild it anyways, move the door over and rebuild it and change the layout. I mean, we're going to have to do it anyway, so why not? So that being said, because we're having to go ahead and do that, well, there's going to be several things that we're going to have to change. So number one, the placement of the elevators was off to this side, and there's the door entrance. But now, because the entrance is going to be further over here, we're going to have to find a new placement for the elevator area, which more than likely is going to be somewhere around here, because I kind of like things to somewhat make sense, and the elevators are right here. So what we're going to do is swap this little area that Michelle built, that is basically just a little park, and we're going to swap the elevators with the park. So we're going to put the elevators in the back, swap the park to the front. We may have to kind of move things around a little bit with that park, or kind of an area just for minifigs to hang out and have a bite. And then what that'll do is the elevators will now link up to where the elevator main room is going to be at, and it all will now make sense. But because of that, all this has to swap out. It has to be completely redesigned, which is totally fine. We're still going to keep all of the cool details that we had before, but all the new stuff that we're going to add is really going to expand upon this. So I'm super excited. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the mills plating thing and all that other stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and get all of that knocked out, and then we can figure out where the placement of the door is going to go and all of that good stuff. So let's get to it. The garage has been mills plated, and now it is extremely sturdy and also very solid. I can pick this thing up and it does not move at all. You could not do that with the garage in its previous state. Now, don't worry about the blue here. We just ran out of the correct color that we needed for this, so we just threw blue. You're not going to see this in the full-on build, so it doesn't really matter. Now, after mills plating this and looking at the city and kind of comparing the way that things were previous compared to they are now, this is going to be a much bigger rebuild than I initially thought. Whenever this thing broke apart, I kept all of the original stuff, thinking to myself, well, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and implement some of these things back into the new rebuild, and everything will be great. And that's not going to actually happen because of the way that we are now building the city in the form that it's in. It's just not going to work. Oh, and by the way, the original garage used to be 2.5 base plates, and now it is 3 base plates by, I believe this is 12 studs right here. It is considerably bigger than what it was before, but it still fits where it needs to fit. We just kind of took a little bit of space away from like a tertiary build. We have this right here. Then we have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle build. There was a third build going in between these two, and we just took a little bit of space from that. So it is what it is. But to explain fully, you have to visually see what is going to be the difference. So let's take this over to the city, and then we can look at that more in depth. Okay, so we've walked on over to the back of the Lego City, and now we can kind of explain where the new build is now not working originally with what we had planned before. Now, I went ahead and mentioned in the last video that we were going to be changing this build up, which is the one that Michelle put together so that it would fit now, because we're going to have to shift the elevators that were in the front, then to the back, so it made sense. In the original garage build, the elevators were actually towards the front, so it made sense for this to be towards the front as well. Well, now that has completely changed. And we mentioned in the last video that we were just going to go ahead and put this to the back, and this would be great, and yada, yada, yada. But now that I've really started looking into it, I'm not happy with how we were going to be planning things before. So if we just go ahead and take this down here and position the camera so you can see a little bit better. Okay, so this right here is obviously the entrance and the exit to the garage. When you look through here, you can see we're going to be having greenery. There's going to be minifigs walking. You're going to see portions of potentially the beach, maybe some of the buildings that are down there. And it's going to be a fantastic view to look through. But if we did the building the same way that it was before, if you do not remember, I'll throw some B-roll. That would pretty much block this entire area right here, and then would destroy that shot right there. And it's really important, at least for Michelle and I, we really want to have these views that just look amazing. That's a part of the build process, in my opinion. It's not the main thing, but it's part of it. So because, unfortunately, it would block all of this, well, that would disappear. So thinking long and hard about what we could potentially do to rearrange this garage, it basically means that all of the stuff that we had previously built, except for the base plate layout, is gone. It's just not going to be reusable. We're just going to go ahead and take it all apart and reuse those pieces for the new design. So now we need to come up to here. Let me angle this camera so that it makes sense for y'all. Okay. All right. So again, when I build, I like for things to make sense. If the elevators are here, I want the elevator shafts to be below it. That's just the way that I build. I know that this is a Lego city, but I want it to make some kind of sense. So that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to grab this and we're going to split it down the middle, and we're going to be putting one elevator. I don't know why I said it like that, but we're going to be putting one elevator on this side over here facing this direction, and then the other elevator facing towards it. So as minifigs come out, they will be coming over here into the center. We'll put something here in the center, pretty nice for them, maybe some floral arrangements, something of that nature. And then they'll walk into the little green area that Michelle built, which is going to be a very cool shot as well, because you have this massive tree that she mocked that just looks so good. So because we're going to split these elevators in half, well, the exact same thing has to happen down here. So we'll be splitting the elevators in the same, almost the same stud placement, maybe one or two studs apart down here as well. Elevators will be facing each other. The elevator shafts will be facing each other. It's not just going to be very bland and blank, because I really liked the slide door effect that I had on the other elevator compartment areas and stuff like that. But we're not going to be able to do that here. We just don't have the space, and we're not wanting to rob that specific view. So the elevators will split. Okay, we'll have the same kind of minifig meeting area right here in the center, and then we'll have something up here, maybe an archway, and then we're going to have some more detail to those elevators, some piping, some of the things that you would see in a elevator shaft, or at least the elevator like compartments. What that's going to go ahead and do is splitting those two elevators is going to give us that amazing look through here. which we really ultimately want. So, yeah, this has gone from a just a simple rebuild because it fell apart to now a complete redesign, and that is going to take some time. So in this video, we're going to try to get as much done as possible, but I don't think we're going to be able to pull it off because there's a lot of moving parts that we need to configure and we need to consider parking, the placement of everything. Yeah, it all has to make sense. All right, so let's get back into let's figuring out the actual area where the elevators are going to be and also the parking. So let's get to that. Okay, after some careful consideration on spacing and the things that we did not want to eliminate from the new garage build, this looks like it's going to be the blueprint going further with how we're going to be setting things up. So let's go ahead and start over here on the right hand side. So first off, we wanted to make sure that we still implemented the EV parking because, you know, EVs are a thing and they're all over the place and we always see chargers everywhere. And these are the EV printed pieces that we made with our Eufy Make, and they came out fantastic. So we went ahead and made sure that we had those going here. Then as we move a little bit further, this open area, because of the way that things work out stud-wise, it's an open area. Now we don't know what we're gonna do. We may turn this into a area that you can park your bikes and whatnot, and also maybe just an area for minifigs to sit and wait for their friends or family members to make it to the parking garage so then they can go over to the elevator. So we're going to look at this. We're going to figure out what we can potentially make out of it. Now, as we go a little over to the left, we now have just two basic parking spaces, and we were able to get one more extra parking space, which is good because then it makes sense. There's a lot of cars and people visiting, so you want to have as many parking spaces as you can get. Now, moving a little bit over to the right hand side, or the left hand side, sorry, over to the left hand side is going to be the signs and the parking spaces for drivers with disabilities. These are the other two prints that we made. We wanted to make sure that we brought these from the other build into this build and retained it because on number one, it's just fantastic. And it's really cool to have, you know, kind of representation pieces like this showing that, hey, Legos for everybody. And, you know, there we go. So that's going to be cool. Now, the only issue with this is going to be the signs that we had on the walls. Well, looking from the opposite side, because that's where you're going to be looking at this build, well, unfortunately, you're going to be looking at the backside of the studs of those signs. I think that's going to be fine. You know, I don't think it's going to be a massive issue for us to go ahead and just put those because, you know, sometimes you're going to see the backs of builds and whatnot. So I think that's going to be okay. So now moving over to the left, got it right this time. This is going to be where the elevators are going to be at. So you have your walkway here indicating don't, you know, nobody park at this area. This is a walkway for people. And then right here is going to be the elevators. Now it's actually 6 studs smaller than the elevator placements up top. And the reason for that is we lose about 6 studs because of that wood from the IKEA thing that we used to, you know, get the height. So that being said, we wanted to make sure that the elevators linked to the elevators above and they were both in the same plane. And so we had to remove the 6 studs. So the first elevator is going to go right here in the corner, right up against the wall. And then the second one is going to go over here and it's going to be, it'll be slightly off, maybe a stud from this gray part. But then that will then line both of those elevators up so then it makes sense. Now, when it comes to this centerpiece here, I think we're going to ex-nay the area that we had here in the middle that would allow for minifigs to walk back and forth. I just don't think it's going to make any sense to have it anymore, that archway, especially when you have vehicles like this that are parked. Well, you know, they need to roll out and then turn around. So it makes more sense to go ahead and maybe eliminate this. But that being said, when it comes to over here, we'll put that arch back in, connecting both elevators, and then you'll have that view from the backside where you're going to be really seeing the build through over here to the front, and then you'll see all the greenery over here in the city. And so that's going to make a really nice, cool shot lineup. So everything will still, hopefully we'll be able to maintain the archway, but I don't think it's going to have to be rebuilt for it to fit in this area, especially because now we are, a base plate, a base plate, a brick, and a plate higher than where we were before. It is going to save us on some brickwork all the way around, but because I extended it, it kind of just works its way out, or works itself out. It'll probably end up being the same amount of brick. But I like this. I like the way that it's now set up. I like that shot that you're going to have directly straight through, the way that the new elevators are going to work out. The two elevators will be right here. There'll be something here in the center, like an area for minifigs to meet. Before they get into the elevator, or while they're waiting for the elevator, we can tile that off really nice and add something that has some really nice pops of color. But yeah, I think overall, I'm really enjoying the way that this is going to look. And then also, if we tile this area over here with pops of color, then we'll probably carry that same tiling over here, because then it'll have some cohesiveness with the build overall. And like I said before, don't worry about these blue pieces. It was just we ran out of the correct plate to cover those areas. So it's whatever. You're not really ever going to see that stuff. Now, there is going to be a ton of new stuff added to this build that we were going to add to the original one, but then obviously we had to rebuild it. And so there's some pretty cool plans, some pretty cool prints that we're going to be putting into this, and some more details, because we really like to detail, especially if it makes sense, something kind of in the real world. But yeah, that is the new rebuild. Now, I'm going to go ahead and end the video here because we don't want this video to be super long. Just wants nice, consumable bites when it comes to build stuff, so it's not overwhelming. So anyways, this is going to be the end of the video. We will, if you enjoyed the video, do us a favor and go down there and hit it with a like. If you want to see the continuation of the new rebuild, how we're doing with the city, and just anything with Lego in general, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if we have earned it. Now, let us know in the comment section below, what do you think about the new rebuild? How we were able to make sure that we implement the EV parking and the drivers with disability parking, all of that good stuff, and just the layout, how it's looking out to be. Let us know in the comment sections below. So while you're out there looking for Lego, hunting for those perfect sets for you, be safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.